Well, folks, hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Lorena Creole, and in this video, well, it'll be a video by the time you guys see it. We are talking the male to female ratio in fandoms. Now, there's what we know the deal is from being in fandom, and the line that the paid geek media is trying to tell you what fandom is when it actually isn't. So to help me find out more about this, I shouldn't say help me find out more about this, kind of let's like talk about it. We have my wing woman of positive fandom, and we have Dmajini, Lord Commander of the Dark Council. How are you two doing this evening?
Doing great. It's wonderful to be here talking about this with both of you. Thank you for having me here.
Yes. I always enjoy being with you, lovely ladies, and it's going to be a great discussion. I can't wait to get into this.
Yes, especially as it was your idea to have a
Yes,
discussion.
this was a bit of a thing that I got into on the place that we call Twitter, and it. But I actually talked about this real quick on one of my shorts. I believe it was a short I did, and I just wanted to. I made it a short because I didn't want to go too much into it. Because I wanted to. I knew we were going to talk about this, so I wanted
Mhm.
to speak about it with ladies, so people can understand that I'm not just making this up. Okay, I just want people to understand this is not something I made up. It's not something that we made up. It's just something that is. It is what it is. It's not like we're trying to make some conspiracy about the ratio that exists. This is what it was and still is to this day.
Exactly. So before we start with the fun, we are definitely going to going to have with this, and kind of go around and let you all talk about what fandoms you're into and just what got you into fandom to start with. So why don't we start with what fandoms are you into, and what I guess was your gateway drug into getting into fandom, so to speak.
Well, it definitely, my very first fandom was absolutely Star Wars. So, as a kid, I'm not going to say how old I was at the time, but let's just say I was very, very young and I saw Star Wars and it had a huge impact on me. And I loved the, that, that entire IP, but I also watched Star Trek. And then as I matured, I found out that I have a very strong affinity towards erotic science fiction and fantasy. So that then led towards my interest in sex and sexuality, in science fiction, fantasy,
Mhm.
and horror, in television and in film. So those are my interests, more or less. Just if I were just going to really pinpoint it down to a more narrow way of narrowing it down.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll let Dmajini follow behind that.
So I mean, there's a rabbit hole here. I'm not going to try to go too far into Wonderland for you, but
Okay.
I'll say it like this. I was a very sick kid, when I was born, and so there wasn't much I was allowed to do because my mom was very overprotective of me. So what I got into was comics. Like my mother bought me, which I'm kicking myself to this day, Amazing Fantasy. If you guys don't know what Amazing Fantasy is, that is the original Spider-Man comic.
Oh.
I had that as a
Yeah.
kid. Um, so Peter Parker. This is why I have a very big problem when they talk about the different versions of Peter Parker that's not Peter Parker that they call Spider-Man, because
Mhm.
I didn't need Peter Parker to be brown like me for me to like Peter Parker. What made me attracted to the concept of Peter Parker was he was a geeky nerdy kid like me. That's what made me like Peter Parker. But then
Mhm.
obviously it was Star Wars, and between Marvel and Star Wars, that was my main thing. And then obviously DC, and it just accumulated up and up and up, until like I basically like if it's geeky or fandom ish, I love it, except for Rings of Power, but we're not going to talk about
Oh
that.
Lord, we're not gonna talk about. We're not talking about that. I would say like the first fandom that I got into was Star Wars. Um, I was just blown away and like sucked in, to the story. Then when I saw Empire Strikes Back, it was like, wait, movies can do that? I go back to school. I'm like, did you see what happened? Yeah, yeah. Darth Vader is his dad. Is he really his dad?
Yeah.
Or was he just messing with them?
Nope.
And we had like all that time between that movie and Return of the Jedi. So between the swag that would come out, between like books that would come out, even God, I'm dating myself, even worksheets that we would get for like reading in school,
Mhm. They
Star
were
Wars. It was in everything, every freaking thing that it was in. So between Star Wars and then of course there was Star Trek. I was into like a lot of technical stuff, and went from there like into the Transformers because I love mecha, so it was like Transformers with that. And then when I got into comics, because DC was my dad, so I didn't want to mess with that. But Marvel, for me, it was like the X-Men, because I felt like I was completely out of place. I mean, I was a cheerleader in high school. Cheerleaders are not supposed to be smart.
that's right.
Cheerleaders are not supposed to like comics. Cheerleaders aren't doing stuff like, yeah, I heard about Dungeons and Dragons. How exactly do you play that? Because I hear a lot about you don't hear that. So I gravitated towards the X-Men comic books. I mean, I love Storm because of the way she looked and she was a leader, but I mostly identified with Wolverine because for the most part, he just wanted to be left the heck alone for the most part. So that's what I got into, and I just loved getting the books, reading, saving up money, getting the comics. And then as I got older, Star Trek Next Gen, DS9, stuff that you get
Mhm.
together with like-minded people and watch that type of stuff. So that's how I got into that particular fandom. But one of the things that I found out about fandom, and I'm actually going to bring up this meme that Dmajini and I talked about. One of the first things that I realized when I got into sci-fi fandom was that there were not very many women in it at all. And it wasn't like, oh my God, how come there aren't any more women? And it was just like, okay, I guess this is how things are.
And you brought up a great point. You said you were a cheerleader and cheerleaders didn't do any things that you did. And that's what I was trying to explain to people. It wasn't that anybody was keeping you out because God knows who wouldn't want a fine cheerleader coming reading comic books with you? Who wouldn't want that? I mean, come on, let's be smart here. So it wasn't the fact that anybody was holding you out. It wasn't the fact that people were gatekeeping, like they try to say people gatekeep. It was just that's what it was. It's the same thing because, like I said before, I went to George Westinghouse Vocational Technical High School in Brooklyn. My demographic in school was 90% males, 10% females. That's because, shocker, not too many females, like you said, you were into the tech stuff. Not too many females wanted to be into architecture, into being an electrician or drafting. They just didn't want to do it. But conversely, if you went down the road to Clara Balton High School, it was reverse. It was 90% females and 10% males. Guess what kind of school Clara Balton was?
Was
It
it
was a
nursing?
beauty. No, it was a beauty and
Oh, it was
technical high school.
vocational.
Yeah, it was a beauty and technical high school. So it was really that's what the flop was. As a matter of fact, when we were going to have our prom, which nobody did, they were actually going to combine our schools because it
Hmm.
would have made the trade off. But that was the reason why we didn't do it because nobody said they didn't want to go to a prom with nobody they didn't know. So I kind of
Right.
get that. But that's what it was. I mean, it wasn't like anybody was stopping anybody. And guess what? Like I've said 1,000 times. Now, Lorena and you would have been more of the. I think you'd have probably been more open to the fact that if somebody came and that you kind of had some feelings for, and he was speaking a little Star Trek and Star Wars to you, you'd have been. I think you'd have been smooth with you. However, you would have probably that 20% that I always try to say is that if I would have went to like one of your co-cheerleaders and be like, "Hey, I like Star Wars," they'd have been like that meme says, That's exactly what they would have did.
Ew, get away from me, nerd. Ew, don't
Exactly.
talk to me.
That's
Don't
what would
even
have
look
happened.
at me when you see me in the hallway.
Exactly. But and that's why, as guys, we had to have more than one hobby. Like my thing was I liked art, aka graffiti, and that was my hobby. And that's kind of where I was able to, wiggle my way around. But as far as all out and out being like, oh, I like Star Wars, I like X-Men, I like, Peter Parker. And they were like, what? That's what would have happened. But yeah, that was a great point you made there when you said that, as a cheerleader, there was nobody there, on your team. Probably, I mean, in your cheerleader squad, did you have even one other person that kind of liked any of the stuff that you like?
No.
See?
And I couldn't even hint that that's what
Mm-hmm.
I was into. I mean, people kind of knew that it's like, oh, I was in college prep classes. So that's so general
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, they weren't like, oh, you're just, a complete nerd. No, the quote unquote nerds were the ones who were very upfront about what they were into.
Mm-hmm.
Dungeons and Dragons, comics, Star Wars. I mean, they wore it pretty much on their sleeves what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Me as a cheerleader, I couldn't say point blank, hey, I'm into, Star Trek or Star Wars or anything outside of the cursory, hey, did you see the new movie that came out? Just because
Mm-hmm.
it was, just because it was
Yeah.
something to do. I could possibly maybe talk comics a little bit, but it was kind of more of like a passing, thing. Like, yeah, I know who Spider-Man is, yeah, I
Yeah.
know who Wolverine is, but not, how we like to do and drill down into details and issue so and so this happened in this particular character arc or
Mm-hmm.
what. No, I couldn't have that conversation because the chicks that I hung out with, or it's kind of like a shotgun wedding in high school when you're a cheerleader. The ones that I hung out with, they were mostly like the mean girls for the most part. That's pretty
Mm-hmm.
much what it was.
Mm-hmm.
You can't talk to certain people. We don't associate, but if you saw that movie, you know exactly what I'm talking
I never
about.
saw, but I know what you're talking about. And it's funny. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say,
About.
yeah, I that's the one thing too. That key thing that you said there, you couldn't let anybody know. So when I like, and I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole of the people I was going back and forth with, but there were people in there saying, "Oh, I knew girls who were into this, and you're just speaking for you," and like blah blah blah. Like, how could I said, "Well, here's the deal. Just like you just said, Lorena, there might have been plenty of girls that person knew, which I said the 20%. But guess what? They wouldn't do mainstream wise because guess what? What made it cool, well, believe it or not, and I know I chalk this up to the MCU, aka Iron Man, the first Iron Man, is what made it okay for girls to say I like comics. They might have been there before, but when those movies became popular, then it was okay for them to do it. It just was because from that point on, everybody's all about MCU. They got their Batman. They got all the stuff. You will find I work in retail. I see tons of people, men, women, kids, you name it. They walk around. They have a Star Wars shirt on. They have a Marvel shirt on. They have a Lord of the Rings shirt on. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. That's what it is now. It took
Well,
the MCU to do that. That's
well,
what it is.
you make a good point with that because for me, if you saw me, I always collected indie comics. So I collected comics like V,
Mm-hmm.
and I was totally fascinated with the idea of this chick sleeping with this alien. You're like, that's exactly the type of stuff that I want to read. But there was been no way any guy would have come up to me and started talking to me about V. Like it just wasn't done back then. It never happened. That entire like fantasy, like the kids in Stranger Things are very lucky that they are friends, but
Yeah.
if you weren't in that clique, if you were like the older girls, you're never going to meet these guys. The paths will never cross. You have a weird brother or, sister, and you
Mhm.
never, ever, would ever have a conversation with them about this. Now, my brother has read every science fiction, fantasy, horror book under the sun. He's got thousands of books. And when I remember, Lorena, you mentioned that part in The Empire Strikes Back where you were like, that's his dad. And I remember saying that too. And my brother says, you didn't know? I'm like, no,
Like, you didn't
Michael,
know.
I didn't read all of those books you read.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. He says, well, wait till you see what happens in the next thing. I'm like, no, don't tell me. So
Yeah.
there was a little bit of geekdom in the house, but I was not nearly on the level of expertise that he was at because he had everything under the sun. And the other thing I was going to say in regards to this is that so there was no way to really make a connection with anybody else unless you had a relative who was into it and they knew someone. That's usually a very, very close friend who was into it and they knew someone, but there was never a conversation. And I went to Mary Lewis. So there were no boys in the hall to talk to. And if you did see a boy, you were not going to be like, oh yeah, well, do you like Star Wars? No, you're going to be like, hey, how are you? My name is so-and-so, that was not going to be your focus to share something like that because there were no men around in my high school. So any minute, any free moment you had to even talk to a boy was not going to necessarily be to share your interests in that way. It was not something that was commonly done. And I have seen some girls, unfortunately, be very mean to nerds. And it's true. It is true. I'm not going to say that is untrue. I've seen some nasty things. But if I were to go up to a nerd and say, yeah, did you think it was cool when that girl slept with the alien in V and she had a baby? I think that would have freaked a lot of people out. I don't think a lot of people would have been like, no, I don't think that's cool. That you're a little demented if you think that's fine, or you think Diana in the show is like the coolest lady ever. Or like
I remember V. I love that show.
Yeah. What if I went ahead up to some guy in high school and said, hey, have you ever watched heavy metal? Like that would have been considered almost pornographic at that time.
Yep.
I could
What if
yeah,
it's just kind of like, hey, I want to go up to some guy and say, hey, you watch that TV series Alien Nation based on the movie Alien Nation? What did you think about the fact that, you actually had to figure out or learn how to properly have sex with the alien or else she was going to kill him?
What is the name of this? What is the name of this?
You've never seen Alien Nation?
It's a good TV series, right?
Oh, first of all, you
was
have
that the
to
one?
watch
Was that
the
the one with
movie.
the salt? Was it
With the what?
They couldn't be in salt water? Is that the one?
I don't remember.
I don't think so. I know the movie. The premise of the movie was that there was this alien slave ship that like went off course and it crashed to Earth. So they were like refugees. So they got absorbed into the LA population, and they were like the new immigrants, so to speak, like having the aliens integrate into human society. And then the thing is, since they were a slave ship, the overseers that were hunting them actually came to Earth, and there was this whole battle and everything that went on. And it was really good. Like it brought up some points I didn't think about. And then they actually had a television series that was pretty dope. I mean, it was.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
You check it out.
Yeah, but so you made a good point about having relatives that were into fandom and geekdom. See, me, I'm the oldest, so there was no. It was me. So I really was the solo guy out there. Now my siblings sure got it. Like my sister's 4 years younger than me, so yeah, she kind of got into it, but she was about her thing. Like that was, she was doing her thing. And my middle brother's 8 years younger than me, and my youngest brother's 10 years younger than me. So I was basically on my own. There's now my friends that I hung out with. Sure, we talked about comics here and there, but we kind of overrode that with like working on bicycles, writing graffiti, all that stuff like that. So we kind of like, it wasn't like the main thing. So really, it still really fell on me to be like, I'm the geek guy. So like in my family, that's why I said when we had the whole destruction of Star Wars, that split, right? And they're like, they don't want to keep the old fans around. They want to get these new fans. I'm like, if you lose me, you lost my whole family, because I was the guy who would say, go see Star Wars. Like my little cousins that were younger than me, if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't be like, oh, I like, oh, what's up with this? What's going on with that? They would come talk to me about it, and I would kind of get them. They were never really into as much as I was, but I was still that olive branch to say, hey, go check out this movie, check out that.
Mm-hmm.
But once you basically said screw off with the 40 plus old guys that we don't want to keep around anymore, guess what? You lost the 19s and 20s that are my nieces, nephews, and cousins. Well, that's what you lost.
The other thing that I was going to add to this is that I grew up also seeing, although it didn't have the same effect on me as Star Wars did, seeing Christopher Reeve as Superman. And so that was a huge impact. Like, I believed this guy was really Superman, and he was incredible in this role, made the role real for a whole generation. And everybody's trying to reach that ideal, like as a Superman. But then you mentioned, Dmajini, that, obviously, the Avengers would be the part where people started to have the acceptance. I would say we knew that we had passed the point of acceptance when we saw everybody watching WandaVision. Like, whole families were watching WandaVision. And I'm like, why is everybody watching WandaVision? I had no idea that Wanda was such a popular character. Just in general, how come everybody's watching it? And then I realized that we are now at a point where when these shows come out, everyone's watching them. Even people who have never been into genre entertainment ever. They never saw a Superman. They don't know this guy from another one, but they watched Wanda. Like, there was general interest in this. And I couldn't even believe I could speak to anybody on the street about WandaVision. And that has never happened before in my life. I've never seen anything like it.
I agree, because my sister, who, just funny, she'll watch my streams and she's just like, yeah, you had me for a little while, and then once you guys started nerding out, I said, nah, I couldn't deal with that. But that's because I was the oldest, and that was like, my thing. Like, I would go to the bookstore and like save my money and get sci-fi novels to read and stuff like that. So it got passed on actually to her, kind of like in passing, like Star Wars. Okay, I'll go ask my sister about that and find out exactly what it is, that I need to know. But like, for me, one of the things that I guess automatically had me predisposed to knowing that fandom is male dominated is the industry and the profession that I'm in, which is engineering. By nature, that is like 80 to almost 90% men. That's just how it is. It's a certain skill set, a certain where it's logic over emotion. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. What matters is if you can prove it. That's not a disposition that a lot of women have or go into. So with that said, I can't tell you how many conversations revolve around geekdom. And if you didn't know what it was, you were not going to get it. Like, I had some guy, I think some manager was like, what the heck is this server called the Death Star? I'm like,
wow,
that's a development server. That's not for you to use. Well, how was I supposed to know that? Because you're not in IT, and everybody in IT knows if you have a server called the Death Star, Coruscant, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name of the lava planet. Tatooine, Hoth. We know what that means. We know what type of we get the joke. You don't get the joke. Like, I would insert data and stuff where I'd have like Tony Stark as like a record, and they're just like, they didn't freaking get it. But that, in that particular industry, it's different. It's like, you almost, if you don't speak geek, it's like you're not really going to, fit in. And just like you were saying about like when the movie Iron Man came out, like, people were like, oh, this is cool. They're all, I would say that they were kind of blindsided by the fact that you have Tony Stark, who's a billionaire, and and he's a partier, and that's pretty much what a lot of people bought into. When people came back and asked me if I wanted to see it, because I was like, Iron Man, what was he, like a C-level person? I didn't even collect this comic. I'm not even freaking interested in it. So people said, oh, you should go and see the movie. So I do. And we're like, "What did you think?" I'm like, "I'm trying to figure out how to seduce Tony so I can get that AI of his. That's what I'm thinking about that." But when I talked about it with like just some garden variety women who watched it, that part totally freaking went over their head. They didn't get that.
Mm. And again, the one thing too that I will say, the introduction of Marvel, the MCU, I should say, because obviously you had your Christopher Nolan Batman, you
Mhm.
had your Michael Keaton Batman, you had
Right.
your Christopher Reeve Superman. They were like jolts to the system, right? Into the mainstream, I should say. But when it came to the MCU, you had that whole connected universe, and it was just everything. It was like mainlining, geeked them into the mainstream. So that's when it became just that much more, like I said, much more you know, acceptable for more people. Like you say, families are watching WandaVision. You got all that like that. But the
Mhm.
thing that it was that it did bump up the fandom a little bit as far as that ratio. I give it 75-25 now,
Mhm.
as far as like
Wow, that
I,
much.
that's the marginalized workaround.
Mm.
I'm being generous with that. It's probably not that much, but I will say the invention of the MCU into the mainstream definitely bumped up the female audience more, but not enough to do, I don't know, She-Hulk.
Ugh.
You see what I'm saying? It didn't make it enough to do She-Hulk the way She-Hulk was made. Because guess what? As much as they want to do that whole whatever they call it, was doing with She-Hulk, it failed on so many levels because that's not the audience for She-Hulk. Period. It's just not the audience for She-Hulk.
And you make a very good point, Dmajini. I want to put this article up that had managed to find.
Mm-hmm.
And this speaks to that exactly. Now, for myself, granted, I did not collect She Hulk because when I was in the comics, I just didn't have the money to buy it. However, I saw the artwork, I knew of the character. I mean, I liked her, and just not enough to collect the comic. But I was like, okay, She Hulk. So you're basically gonna bring Jennifer Walters from the comic into the MCU. Okay, I'm down. I want to watch that because, from what I read in the comics, I actually liked it. I thought it was pretty cool. What we got was an unlikable character and a show that was basically a feminist manifesto and the middle finger to the so-called online man babies who didn't like the idea of She-Hulk, when it turns out that they didn't really understand that the reason why a lot of people didn't like She-Hulk was because it wasn't She-Hulk
Correct.
from the comics, and that's what we thought what we were going to see. But instead of owning up to that, they want to blame men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've actually gone into deep thought about how they could have made this whole thing work, and I kind of figured it out. And it has what I think what should have happened. This is total fantasy, but what should have happened is that Wanda should have won in the last film in Doctor Strange Part Two, and then She-Hulk should have come in there and kicked her ass. And I think that that would have been the most incredible thing we'd have ever seen ever. Like this would have been maybe something that no one would be expecting to see. But maybe something about She-Hulk could fight Wanda, because I was trying to figure out, well, if Wanda's so strong, who can really defeat her? And it would have to be some weird nature, thing of nature that happens. Why not She-Hulk? And it is a rivalry, and maybe she'd kill She-Hulk, but who cares? Because it would be such a cool, crazy concept. We needed to see if they're going to make them superheroes for them to actually be real superheroes. So when they have an article like this, where they're talking about how the majority of new fans these days aren't actually boys at all, they will always be mostly boys in this fandom. That is just the fact and the way that it is, and that's fine. And for women who are fans, it's great that we're enjoying this. But I think it's a fantasy to. I'd like to think it's 25%. I think it's more like 10 to 15% who are fans, and there's a good portion that are going along with people that they care about to these shows. And I've spoken to many of them who have said, yeah, I've been with this person the whole time. Yeah. Ever since they started collecting. And I'm like, uh-oh. You didn't know he was a collector when you got involved with him, did you? But you love him, don't you? Okay, well, then that's what's important. So, and that's okay. That's really fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm seeing that more and more. What about you, Lorena? Are you seeing situations like that?
Not a whole lot, but I have run into them where the guy is this big, huge, like nerd, and he just loves collecting all this stuff. And he's dragging his poor girlfriend to the convention because she's like, okay, I want to spend time with you, I'll go. And she's like, I'm here. I don't particularly want to be around all these people, but my boyfriend's into this. So I'm just here, for him. But these are also the same women who'll be like, okay, he said he liked this. He's been trying to find this particular action figure. Okay, I need to go look and I need to find that. And they're just like, no, it has to look like this. He said he wanted X, Y, and Z. This is what I want to get. And they get that gift and they're just freaking out because their girlfriend or their wife or whatever thought that much of their hobby that they got them something that they knew that they loved. So I've seen a bit more women who are kind of like that. They're kind of into fandom by association, but for the most part, women who are just diehard fans of the stuff, who used to buy the comic books, go to the movies, watch the television series, can rattle off facts like, okay, yeah, you know what you're talking about. That's still, I would say, probably maybe 20, I'll say 20% now, but probably then maybe like 15 or closer to 10, because it's not something that I would say, like I kept saying, women are pretty much very emotional. They're into detail, but not with this whole fandom thing. A lot of it is very, very, very male dominated. And a lot of it is you have to prove how much you know to make sure that your geek card doesn't get pulled. Like, for example, when I say that I fell asleep in the Battle of Helm's Deep, okay, from the second Lord of the Rings movie, people were like, what? I could hear all the air getting sucked out of the room when I said that. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I was exhausted when I was watching the movie. I was mad that I fell asleep on that. I didn't fall asleep on it because I was bored. But you get where I'm coming from with this. One of the things that and it's not gatekeeping at all. A lot of geeks have been, horrendously bullied for what it is that they love when it comes to this. So they're very protective of it. I've gotten into situations where some geeks haven't been exactly too nice to me because they're just like, okay, good looking girl. She's probably going to make fun of me for my particular hobby. So it's like, okay, well, how much do you know? I'm like, okay. I'm going to tell you what I know. And it's okay. I'm like, it's okay. I'm like, I'm sorry. We didn't mean to be jerk. Like, no. It's okay. It's okay. I'm glad you did that, because that's the difference between a woman who is into this fandom and just a fangirl who's just
because
there.
anybody else who would have been on the reverse of that, they'd be like, oh, you're trying to keep me out of it. No, we're not trying to keep you out of it, because if you see, it's not to keep you out of. You are either in it or you're not. So if you're trying to force your way into it, means you were not into it to begin with. That's the main thing. That's what I see about that. And I like how you two are actually giving them. You're making my ratio smaller, because you're like, it was like 10, 90, 10, and then 50. I did say I was being generous. I just used those numbers because I figured it was just easy cutoff. But I mean, if you're saying 90, 10, and now it's maybe 85, 15.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna argue with that. I'm thinking it's
We're all
because
estimating. We don't know for
yeah,
sure.
I know it is a bit of a guesstimate, but the point of it is like, you know, the main thing that, especially in regards to that one tweet that I was showing you about, the main thing that I was getting to with people were so into this whole, oh, you're just using your own anecdotal evidence. I'm like, I guess you can say that, but it's not like it's something that I'm just rattling off to just be rattling off. It wasn't just me. I saw it happen to my friends, my buddies. Like what you say, like my best friend, like a brother to me, his wife, for like their first anniversary, she bought him in a die cast metal, the original
Mhm.
Voltron. I'm
Wow.
like, I'm like,
Oh, see,
oh,
that's what I'm
oh,
talking about.
oh, oh. I
Wow.
had that as a kid. I actually had the Japanese version. What did they call
Mhm.
it? Because it was because a lot of stuff we get was imported anyway. That was anime before it was like anime.
Yeah.
And I had the diecast version. Of course, as me being younger and I had younger brothers, totally destroyed it. But my
Of
boy
course.
he has a nice Voltron diecast metal. When I go to his house, I'd be like, "Hey, can I see that real quick?" Yeah, yeah. His wife got him a nice birthday present, nice one.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was like you say. My thing is like if you have to try to say, "Oh, you're gatekeeping me out" or whatever, you that should not be the thing. You're either in it or you're not. There's no gatekeeping, like you say. It's not, like I said, no actual geek guy like me would have been like, "Hey, here's this hot chick who likes Star Wars who wants to come and hang out with us." Nah, you can't come. No guy
No.
was saying that.
Well,
No
the,
guy was saying that.
the, the thing that I've noticed at the last con that I went to, which was New York Comic Con
Mm,
in October, and I was very happy to go to see like people that I know. What I noticed is that it seems like anime is grabbing more of the genre of fandom female crowd, especially
mhm,
with some of the characters. And Lorena, you and I have watched a lot of anime together. That
Mhm.
Anastasia character, I found a woman who was cosplaying as Anastasia very easily because he's a character that kind of looks like he could be male or female. Well, maybe not necessarily, but he has some female traits that a lot of
Mhm.
female cosplayers are like, I'm going to cosplay as this character. And I sent it to you. Of course, I found that person. My jaw dropped to the ground, but I thought it was interesting because I think that that's also pulling some of the, geekdom, female fandom, and making those ladies feel it's fine to, this is what we're into. This is it. This is me. And they're perfectly fine with it. So I think that the popularity of anime increasing is also feeding into the increase in women in the fandom.
I would have to 100% agree with you on that because when I watch anime, first of all, some of the fashion in anime just blows my mind. And then I'll go online and look at the cosplayers. I'm like, okay, I need that. I need that. That outfit is hot. I have to, I have to do that. So it totally and completely makes sense that happens, especially with female characters in anime, especially some of the conventions that I've gone to, like you did, and you have a bunch of women there cosplaying, you know, as an anime character. I remember this one year at Dragon Con. It was a total and complete, like, I hadn't planned on doing it. I actually had some outfit that looked like it came out of Sailor Moon. I
Wow.
kept getting stopped by people saying, "Can I take a picture with you?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Why? Okay, but
mhm,
why?" And they're
mhm.
like, "Oh, would you want to take pictures with you?" I'm like, "I don't even freaking know these people. They didn't care. They just want to take a picture because you're a hot girl in a cosplay outfit, you know?" And
There it goes.
that's all that they really all they really care about. Because
Mhm,
another point to bring up, and I think it was Amelia Clark who said something about she went into a comic store and felt unwelcome. I'm like, which one did you go into?
mhm,
Because this is just me, but every time I have gone into a comic book store, um usually the people working there will ignore whatever dudes were waiting back in line and ask me what it is that I need. Can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help
Mhm.
you? I come back in, they're like, oh, you remember that so and so you were looking for? Yeah, we just got this in. I've even put one to the side for you. I can't get enough help. I don't even when I have to walk into a GameStop, when I have to, because I don't like walking to a GameStop. I don't like walking to a GameStop. I walk to a GameStop with my nephews because they, want stuff. I'm like, I can't freaking stand being in GameStop and ripping people off for trades. Can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? I'm like, no. I'll call you. I'll call you. You sure? You sure? What kind of game are you into? I'm like, oh Lord,
Mhm.
here we go. And then I start talking about which ones. Oh shoot, that's the license for them to keep talking, ignore the phone ringing, all
Absolutely.
of that. But I'm just like, I don't understand where you're getting this attitude that women are not welcome in fandom. Is it that you don't, what you call gatekeeping, you don't like being held to account for knowing certain essential parts of a fandom to make sure that you have respect for a certain fandom?
It
Yeah,
sounds about right.
I can see a person walking into a comic book shop and not actually knowing what they're going in there for, And I think that that can kind of be a mistake because if you do end up in a conversation with somebody and they're talking to you, well, what is it particularly that you like about it? And you don't have an answer, they're going to be wondering what you're doing there. And after they have come, like crossed the plateau of the fact that you're a girl and that they're talking to a girl.
Yeah, pretty
Mhm.
much. Yeah.
Once that wears off, they're kind of curious, like, what is she doing in here? The other stores are, it's next door, that's where you went to go, and right,
This
you
is not Sephora, just to tell you.
You know what's funny? It's funny you say you don't like walking in the GameStop. There was this one GameStop that was not too far away from me, and it was very rare, which is funny. Very rare that you again still a bit of a tech store, technically speaking. Wasn't that
Hmm.
many females that worked there, but there was this one that worked there. Not only was she like she was down, like I could tell, like she was gorgeous, and me being it was the reverse. Like I'm in like, so what kind of games you like? And the funny thing about it too, the crazy thing, I actually just saw that same girl the other day at my job. Being at work retail, you run into people every now and then. I says, "You used to work at that GameStop, didn't you?" She's like, "Yeah," and they're just like talking or whatever. But I'm like, it's literally the reverse of what happened to you. Like I was the customer talking to the employee, like, "Hey, yeah, by the way, because once you see it, like again, pretty girl is into geekdom. Why not? That's what I'm saying. Why not? So this is the whole thing. And I know people might say, "Oh, that's just your misogyny speaking. You just want like the girls." Yeah, I like pretty people. I'm sorry. I like pretty people. I'm
You
sorry.
know what? I have to laugh because this is freaking hilarious. I remember when Revenge of the Sith came out, right?
Mhm.
Revenge of the Sith came out. Bunch of people from work weren't going to go see it. I'm like, well, I'm probably going to get there a little bit late. They're like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll save you seat. We'll save you seat. I'm like, okay.
Mhm.
So I go in the theater. There are hardly any women. All eyes are looking at me. I'm like, I'm just trying to find. My friends are back, like, hey, come on up here. You want to see some player hating looks? How do
I'm
you
sure.
know this girl so and so? And I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like, who's that guy down the end waving? They're like, I don't know. I guess he just wanted to be part of the group that kind of say that they knew you. It was the freaking weirdest thing, but it was so cute at the same time. It's funny, but it was the same. It's just like there's not a lot of women in fandom, but if you're a woman and you show up and it's something that either you're genuinely interested in or you're just like, I'm here because my significant other is interested in it, you don't really get all of this so-called, misogyny or, gatekeeping, or you're just, trying to keep women out. That's not the experience that I've ever had. I mean, I've gotten into a couple of knockdown, drag out geek arguments, and pretty much like any population, you're going to have a certain percentage of a holes that are going to be in there. But that's pretty much
Absolutely. Yeah.
everywhere,
Yep.
where that's going to happen. But I don't like this disingenuous idea that because fandom is predisposed to men, that there's something wrong with it and it needs to be changed.
And it's funny you say that because I couldn't imagine myself going to, I don't know, knitting, right? Big shouts to Carrie Smith because I know she was in the knitting thing, right? And just be like, oh yeah, um, this doesn't have enough. It doesn't have enough Tony Stark in knitting. You need to change this, and you're gatekeeping me from doing it. How does that sound? But it sounds ridiculous. But that's literally what's being done in reverse now when you talk about geekdom, where you have this, subsection of ladies who say that they're being, excluded or being, gate kept and all the stuff like this. And again, it's real easy not to be quote unquote gate kept because you're already in the gate. If you are already into fandom, you're already there. It's like an innate thing that you're a geek. That's basically what it is. If you're part of it, you're part of the thing. You're part of it. It's not going to be, oh, you got to stay out. Oh, this. But and again, like I said, it's the same thing. Like I said before, in my high schools, I couldn't go to Clara Balton and be like, "Oh, we need to wire hair different than what you're doing because you're doing things that I don't like over here." That's basically what we're having, and it's like this nonsense that we're in now, and it's crazy because before it used to be like when before Star Wars, before the dark times, before Disney Star Wars, if you told somebody you were a Star Wars fan, guy, girl, didn't matter. It was just like the secret handshake. We cool people. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like that. Now it's this whole thing. It's almost like, and I think somebody was mentioning it the other night, where how anime is becoming so mainstream. I don't want it to be because once comics became mainstream, it got tainted. Once anime started, once gaming. I mean, you heard what they're doing to freaking Call of Duty. Holy
That's
smokes!
sad that they've
I'm like,
made it
Wait,
PG-13
what happened to Call?
and
I
Grand
don't play Call
Theft,
of Duty.
right?
I don't either, but I heard the reports about it. They are basically making the thought police version of Call of Duty. So you
What
can't, you know
the?
how the lobbies are, you know how
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
yeah, you
smack
can't do that
talking in the
anymore.
lobby,
Yeah,
right?
you can't do that anymore. People, you can get ratted out or suspended for that. Anytime anything becomes too mainstream, it gets ruined. That's why I love anime and I hope Japan never really bends the knee, but you see it kind of work, especially in regards to like the voice actors in that situation. Yeah, the English the dubbers and
Yeah.
stuff. That's where you're seeing it a lot. But as long as they kind of hold the line over there, we still got something, to look forward to. But it is what it is. Feminism and
Absolutely.
fandom and with the women of sci-fi.
Yeah.
I'll let you leave with this since you found this one.
Well, this is a an article on a Comic Con and a panel. Let's say before things got too bad, uh, in regards to women and fandom, genre entertainment in particular, and in particular before things got too bad with the comic book industry. Let's say the mainstream Marvel and DC comic book industry before things collapsed, because it was actually collapsing before this thing happened with the feminism thing because of sales and Diamond and all that
Mm-hmm.
sort of craziness stuff. So that in combination with let's say some people who are in charge of the industry forcing characters to do things that just didn't make sense or just didn't sell. If it didn't make sense and it was a big seller, no one would have cared. But we're talking about books that used to sell hundreds of thousands of copies, selling 20,000, 10,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then forcing schools and places to buy these comics that no one on earth wants to read. So, I think that that's kind of like creative accounting, but whatever Diamond may or may not have been doing right or wrong, it became
Mm-hmm.
exaggerated at a time where people couldn't go out and buy stuff, or it just wasn't happening anymore and the money ran out. But we saw this, it's kind of like a domino effect when when this was happening. But this particular article is about a panel, and they talked about the idea that women do like, you know, the fandom. There's a lot of fans that are female, but also some of the things that that were on the panel. Like here it says the badass women of sci-fi, with
Mm-hmm.
a woman from The Expanse, and I liked The Expanse for the most part. For a good portion of The Expanse, I think the books were phenomenal. And there are a lot of things to learn, what worked and what didn't work. Sometimes you liked a character, and sometimes maybe the story wasn't great, so then you could take that character out, which is something that I
Mm-hmm.
always think comics always had the potential for. Maybe that character didn't shine in that series, but maybe they might shine in another, so you could give a character another chance or see how it works. But I think that was very interesting for there to even be a panel where it's women saying, yes, we love comics, we love the fandom, we love science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Was kind of very nice to see. And this one did suggest that was the future, was going to be, yeah, we're enjoying it and we're proud to be part of this community. But it didn't quite turn into that necessarily, in some aspects. And we were talking about how, the actual website, the Mary Sue, which more or less was
Mm-hmm.
created by the Abrams Media. It was created in order to provide just honestly another platform for people to speak about women and fandom, and it kind of turned into something very different. And so I think it's very interesting. um, I like to stick towards entertainment, so I very rarely talk about some of those other things that happen. um, I'd rather talk about what happened in the story and whether there was sex in it or not. But um, well, something, comics are an incredible homage to the human body, and we've seen some incredible artwork in
Mm-hmm.
comics. The men and women who use their artistic ability to create what I consider masterpieces in some cases. Really, just these characters that are phenomenal, and the imagination that they have to bring them to life in these comics, and the creativity is just such a wonderful group of creators that it's when you realize what you've had and how great their work was. That's when you start to say, oh, this work we're getting now is not the same level of what we knew in the past, and it's quite
Mm-hmm.
evident. We've seen some very interesting things come out that I don't even consider a comic, but um, I think
Mm-mm.
that the story, while it is true that the story is important, you better have some slamming artwork, or else it isn't going to really grab people the way your story should be grabbing people.
Absolutely. Case in point. Yeah, I remember Snowflake and Safe Space.
You mean the name itself was just a meme?
Trailblazer and oh my gosh, who was the Ben 10 ripoff in a bad way that ran on internet gas?
Internet gas. What's his name?
Oh God,
I can't
I
remember.
I
It
can't.
was something on the nose. Like all the names were on the nose. Like it wasn't even like they had cool names. Like like a bishop or a cyclops, Wolverine. Something. Even like the new Warriors, which they supposed to be the new Warriors. What was it?
Mhm.
A Speedball. Speedball still sounds doper than what they came up with, because Speedball became what did he change his name to? Pestilence, not Pestilence. Penance. He turned to
Mhm.
Penance after, which, by the way, that's a Civil War deep cut, because it was actually the New Warriors who caused the Civil War because
Uh-huh.
their actions. They were the
Civil
ones
War
who started.
is my
Yeah,
favorite because I
they
like
were the ones who
to fight each
actually
other.
started their version of the Sokovia Accords. It was
Yeah.
them. That's what
Mhm.
was that happened, that made that happen. But yeah, it's just crazy that I just, when you see stuff like that, that's where I get more annoyed with that than any version of so-called gatekeeping, is when you have the people who are in
Mhm.
there just defiling the fandom, like I mentioned briefly, Rings of Power. What a freaking, it's like a freaking defamation, basically.
It's
That's how bad Rings of Power was.
it's a freak show. I
Yeah.
mean, and to agree with what was saying, and Dmajini, pretty much what you were alluding to as well. when I would pick up comics, I picked up comics not only for the story, because I knew the story was coming, but it was the artwork. You
Mhm.
had buff looking men, you had sexy looking women. Now that's pretty much gone. Like, have you
Mhm.
seen the promo shots for Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania? Why does Kate Beckinsale look like she has a Karen haircut
Wait,
now?
Kate
I mean,
Beckinsale's in there?
no, oh, I'm
Do
sorry.
you have them? Do you?
I'm forgetting. I'm forgetting what her name is. I can't believe I said Kate
Oh,
Beckinsale.
and
I haven't seen the photos.
oh, I'm
You
trying to blank on
you
her name too. It's right
you
on the
got
tip
to
of my
see.
tongue.
I
You
have
got
to
to see.
have them.
Yeah, I know
Putting me on the
they gave
spot
her the
here.
fake Karen cut.
Yeah, a fake Karen
Oh
haircut.
no! Oh
Nothing like, and not like a sexy shortcut either. I mean, it didn't look like this avant-garde, sexy looking haircut. It was just like
Evangeline Lilly. I had to look it up.
Evangeline. Okay, I can't believe I said Kate Beckinsale. Hold
But
again.
she's
Uh,
sexy. Are you saying that she's unsexy in this?
They made her.
she's unsexy. Let me see if I can pull this up so you guys can see it.
Thank you, Lorena.
Because what it says exactly kind of what we've been talking about, how they have just changed.
I
It's
got
like
it.
you have it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like you can't have feminine looking women because of the quote unquote male gaze problem. But what these people don't understand, people like, like Gail Simone and like Jessica Gao, is that women like looking at good looking women too.
Mm-hmm. We do.
Like I said, I said I like pretty people. It's just listen,
Yeah.
when I see a Jason Momoa, it's not that I'm, I got news for you. It's just I'm like, hey, I want to get jacked like Jason Momoa so I can attract Lorena and our That's what I want. That's what I want to do. It's not because you know what I'm saying? That's what I want to get jacked like that because that's what I'm trying to attract. It's not that, oh, I gotta have a guy. Sure, you're gonna have to have some regular looking people in it because if you're trying to tell a story, not everybody's gonna be Greek gods or whatever, right? But when you're talking about your superheroes, they're supposed to be larger than life. They're supposed to be something that you want to achieve. You want to get jacked, you want to get in shape, you want to get into those squats for the ladies. You know what I'm saying? That's what y'all want to do. That's what it's for. But when you sit there and gotta have regular dudes, I'm like, regular ladies. I work in retail. I want to see regular people. I see them every day. Okay, you know.
That's like I think it was Bill Engvall from
Mm,
Blue Collar Comedy Tour. Where he was like, I want to see hot looking people on TV
mm,
and movies. If I want to see ugly people, I just go to Walmart.
yeah,
It's like I don't have to go, I don't have to go out of my way to see average
exactly.
looking people, but they act as if there's something wrong with attractive people. Matter of fact, like, you ready for this?
Yeah, there it
Oh
goes.
my God.
Mm-hmm.
She looks like she's about to call for the manager.
They gave her the same haircut as him. Like, why? Why?
Terrible. It looks like they photoshopped her head onto a sexy woman's body. It doesn't even look like the same person, right? It doesn't look like her head is actually attached to that body.
No.
I loved Evangeline Lilly's look.
Yeah, she's a
I
she's a good looking lady.
She's a
She's a
good
good looking.
looking lady. It doesn't make sense to, well,
And you
when
know
you
what's funny?
realize who's running things, it does make sense. But it's just like, why do that?
Am I incorrect in stating that she had a shorter haircut in the first one, but she had it styled, right? Wasn't it styled
Yes,
before?
it was a very specific style. I don't
Yeah,
know
she looked
what
good in that.
this
Eh,
this is something that no self-respecting hairdresser would ever say was their
It's very
work.
unattractive on her. It doesn't do anything for her.
mm-hmm. I don't know. And this is all Alonzo's doing, right? This has got to be her, right?
Yes,
Victoria.
Victoria Alonso, because up until well, let's say with Endgame,
Mm-hmm.
that's the era of Feige. Now we're in this era of Feige's there, but Victoria Alonso is the one that's pretty much pulling the springs. That's
I
why
thought
you're
she was
getting this
Sony.
push. Hmm?
I thought she was Sony.
This is such a
I
bad look.
I think I don't know if she was former Sony, but I do know
They brought
they
her
brought
into
her into
Marvel.
Disney.
Oh
They
my
brought her
god.
into Disney. They brought her into Marvel. And one of and I forget exactly when it was, but an interview that they did with her where she basically said we are going to be doing more stories that are more female oriented, LGBTQ plus Skittles Nation oriented. That's the direction that they were going
It,
into with Marvel.
and
Not like, which is the reason why Thor is such a caricature
yeah,
now.
he's nowhere near like that first Thor was the best Thor. The
Yes.
second one was then I will say Ragnarok was okay because it wasn't like what they did. Now it just they went full on Victoria. That's what they went with Thor Love and Thunder.
They
And
ruined a nude scene for me, and I'm not happy about that.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that you can put the Skittles Nations, you can put your quote unquote, you can put all this stuff in there. It better be a good story. But see,
That's all we freaking want.
the problem is they're doing all of that and they're forgetting that you have to tell a good story. That's the problem. Because again, I will bring this up and I'll bring it up all the time. And you would probably love this if you haven't seen it. Castlevania, the animated
Yes,
series.
I have. I finally saw that.
Did you see that, Artem?
No, I haven't seen
Okay,
it.
I keep
you're
telling
gonna
her she
like
gotta
that.
see
You
it.
need to see. You need to see Castlevania. You need to see
Yeah.
it. Castlevania put the anime out. They had the LGBT stuff in there. They had the representation stuff in there. They had all kinds of stuff in there. And guess what? It was a dope show, and nobody cared. It was dope, and I can't wait for the spinoff to come with his son. I
Yeah.
can't wait. Okay, I cannot wait for that. But Castlevania is a perfect way to do that because if you put your story first, if you say, look, again, this thing against me. We talk about, we were talking about the split with ladies and all that stuff this whole time. But let's talk about, just add one more thing to that. This inclusion thing, because that's kind of where this kind of got twisted in there.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to the older shows, or movies, I should say, like The Last Dragon, one of my favorite movies. That had everybody in there.
That one.
Every single body in there. It had every kind of representation. It had women. The Vanity was freaking a strong
I love
a woman in it. Like it was great. It was great. And this was done before 2016. This is what I'm trying to tell people. This is all the stuff that people are saying. We've been there, done that. It's actually you guys are making it worse by doing what you're doing now with all the stuff that y'all fixing. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. And they're breaking it.
The star from The Last Dragon was at New York City Comic Con. He was there.
Oh,
really?
Tamik,
he was there.
Tamik, I guess I forget how you say his name.
I don't know if I'm pretty sure I took a photo of him, but he was there. Yeah, he was there. He looks the exact same.
I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
He's really into martial arts and all that stuff too.
Yeah. So it's still that popular that he can make an appearance at a con. What is it? 40 years later?
Mm-hmm.
Or 30 something years later, it's still that popular. It has made that much of an impact that he can still show up to a con and people are like, oh wow, it's the guy from Last Dragon. So
it's Tymek. I knew I was close to it, but it's Tymek. Yeah, he's in there. And this came out in 1985.
Okay.
I was 9.
So it's almost 30,
wow,
39 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. Box office was $33 million. That's how much it made. Okay, that's
a ton of money.
That's a lot of money back then. Now it ain't nothing, but back then, $33 million was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Let's find the picture. Where is the picture?
I wonder what was the.
You guys let me know when you find the picture.
What's that?
No, I said y'all let me know when you find the picture, and I'll put it up. I'll put it up there.
Oh, she was looking for a picture. I wasn't.
Because like you all. Oh, you do have it? Okay.
I don't have it yet. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Okay, no, take it out. Take it out. I was
On
going to say to go back to
yes.
oh, I was just to say just to go kind of go back to the like the whole inclusion thing, but you're right. Both of you are right. If you concentrate on the story, you can put all that other stuff in there,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you give us characters that we really and that you get in, that you get endeared to, like with Alucard.
Mm-hmm.
I just cared about his character. It was just like your dad is Dracula, and
Mm-hmm.
basically he's just trying to wipe out the whole,
Mm-hmm.
human race and everything. I didn't care
Mm-hmm.
about his orientation. I just cared about who he was as a character and what he was up against. Wow, you do
Yeah,
look
he
the
does.
same.
Yeah, he does.
I'm sorry
Dang.
about the reflection, but
Oh no, that's okay. That's okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
he looks the exact same.
You
His hair is
still
just
look
a
good.
slightly different color, but his
Yeah.
skin, all of it, it's like he's literally 18 years old. It was quite disturbing, actually.
Wow.
I kept looking at him like, yeah, he still looks 18. Like he doesn't color his hair, obviously, but he doesn't have to because he just looks so young. It's
Mm-hmm.
cool. And
58 years old.
smiling, happy to be there. All of us who are into The Last Dragon and remember it so well. Yeah, he just looked amazing. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Things like that, I think, Lorraine, and we talked about the female gaze are so
Mm-hmm.
important to us. If you like men, or if you are a woman who likes men, that female gaze is super important. So the stronger or more fit or like a character, and some kind of appeal, he doesn't have to be. I mean, Spider-Man, I thought was really, really hot. So, I think it depends on the character. There's so many different types of men in these genres that, certainly everybody has their own strengths. So
Absolutely.
that is something to think about when we're looking at this, but it's a pleasure for us to see men, at their best. And we're looking at those things. And I think just naturally, any woman who's interested in men would be drawn to these characters because they are men. But that's my female gaze theory. It's not always the case, but that's how I look at it. It's a natural feeling to be attracted to these men.
Yeah, like I said, with Aquaman, I had zero interest. And then found out Jason Momoa got cast. And I'm like, okay, now you have my
Where do
attention.
I sign? She's like, where do I sign?
I think that's
How
okay.
many times can I see this movie?
I think it's okay. I think that some different things will get you interested in different stories. And if the story was garbage and the movie was trash, you would have gone to see it, but you would have been disappointed, right? I mean, I think
Absolutely. It's just
I'm
like,
not gonna lie. I
uh,
mean, Amber was looking good with that red hair.
it was beautiful. She was
She was
stunningly
looking good with
beautiful.
that red
it
hair.
looked good.
She looked
But
fantastic.
Too
it was
bad she's
the hot, the crazy scale.
yeah. She was in the danger zone. All right.
She was in the Kill Bill red alert zone. The screen was going red.
Well, I think she was cast for the role perfectly. I mean, that was the character you needed to see in that role. And
Mhm.
she did it well. And even if it was 5 minutes, it doesn't really matter. You needed someone who could play that role, and she
Mhm.
did it well. So, it was accomplished. The casting agents did their job. Who would replace that person? I don't know who. When it's difficult to figure out who could replace them, that's when there is something about that actor that was right for that character. And it's a shame that we have situations where these characters are not fitting in anymore, or other extraneous circumstances are causing problems, but it doesn't be the case. I loved watching her in that. I loved her in that. And
Yeah.
so, like Lorena said, we like to see beautiful people, beautiful women, especially. She was stunning in that. I thought she was wonderful.
Yeah. You got any more articles for us?
Yeah, there's another one. Lorena, there's one about and it's kind of like, what is it called? Oh my goodness gracious, what is it called? It's the first one I sent, where it says templenews.com.
Oh, I have it. I have it. I
Okay.
have it. Interesting. I had that one like the first one up. Yeah.
And this is, I think, maybe a little bit of what both of you were touching on about the gatekeeping and then the idea of this discrimination, which I've never experienced ever in fandom, ever.
Neither have I.
So, I was shocked to see um, anybody even talking about this. And I think I can't tell them what they're experiencing isn't true because this is their experience, but
Right.
I just can't believe it. That I've never had a toxic experience in a fandom in my life. I found that, a good portion of the men were highly intelligent. Um, and I enjoyed that they had a certain level of intelligence,
Mhm.
not just in the fandom, Lorena, not just in the fandom, but just in a lot of things outside of what we were even talking about. So it's a group of very well informed, well educated men for the most part. If you're talking, especially if you're talking about the older generation, and
Mhm.
just a lot of very excited and enthusiastic people, young men who enjoy these characters. If you're talking about maybe the younger crowd, but never have I been discriminated against in the fandom, and it's unfortunate that they even had, I guess, at the school wherever they were, um, experiencing this. In the article where she talks about, I when she says temple, I guess maybe she means Temple University.
I think so. That's what I'm getting from looking at it. Yeah, that it's Temple University.
Yeah, and it's sad to even see an article like this because I still am somewhat in disbelief of it. I have my reservations about it, but like I said, I'm not going to say what they're saying
Hmm.
is wrong. But the idea that that
Hold
this was
on. I'm
even
gonna.
experienced or had to be discussed is unfortunate. That was even something that would come up because and then I wondered because they're talking about business, maybe they experienced some kind of discrimination in business, but never have I seen that in the anime, especially in the anime side where they accept anyone, um, no matter what they're like. They're even more, but they're talking about
Mhm.
this Temple is Sports Club, a student organization dedicated to competitive video gaming. Since then, she's felt more confident talking about her interests with other fans in person. And,
Mhm.
this might have been anxiety that she may have felt. And I have seen a few, she talks about harassment from fans of video games like Overwatch. And this might be what you were referring to, Dmajini, where they shut down the chat box
Mhm.
um, for whatever reason. But
Mhm.
honestly, what I do want to say is that whenever I have played cooperative games, if there was a problem, whoever was running the game would shut it down. So it wasn't tolerated.
Mhm.
And I think that the overall responsibility and the feeling to correct an issue for gamers has
Mhm.
not been acknowledged because I've seen them not tolerating certain things or making sure that they don't have children in there, which can happen
Mhm.
sometimes, and they might do things that they shouldn't be doing. But um, my experiences of even observing these chats, that somebody's like, we're not going to have that in our chat, so stop. And, so the
Mhm.
idea that they were experiencing discrimination in there, I'm trying to figure out what it was. What exactly was the discrimination? You're already in the game. So what's the discrimination? What is it?
It's
It
yeah, that's
it doesn't know
interesting.
what you are in the game too. That's the thing I don't get. I mean, sure, obviously if you got a mic, you can tell, but even then, it's like if somebody's talking smack to you, like what we were just saying before, like with Call of Duty, you talk smack back. That's how it works. That's how you do this on the game. Like if somebody's talking ish, talk right back. Like what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's a game. Like what? What? You're probably on the other side of the world and you want to talk smack. Ooh, my feelings are hurt on the other side of the world. Come on, man.
Well, I think
It's
I'm sorry. Go
okay. I was just gonna say it's like that's how the game is, and that's how the environment is. And it's like an either you adjust to deal with it, or you just tap out and just say, it's not for me. But if you have to tap out and say that it's not for me, it doesn't mean that it's quote unquote toxic, so to speak.
And is there sexism when you're 10 years old? Um,
No.
I don't think
What?
that exists.
No,
I think
no.
that's fantasy. I think that sometimes people may be mean to you,
Mhm.
but I don't believe that there's such a thing as sexism against a 10-year-old.
No, and this is and the reason why I highlighted this because there were two parts, two things. We actually had touched on them before with this one where she's like, the boy didn't believe she was a real fan and would make her answer obscure trivia questions to prove herself. Remember what I had said earlier that, it is gatekeeping in a way, but it's to find out, are you a real fan or are you just trying to blow smoke? Now, granted, there may be some people who are new to a fandom and
Mhm.
who are interested and may not know everything, but you genuinely want to find out. That's a different case where people are kind of like, okay, if you're really, really genuinely interested, hey, I'll hook you up, mentor you, or something like that. But this isn't sexism.
No.
Again, it's either you know about it, want to know about it, or you don't, and that's it regardless of who you are. So just because you feel slighted that you didn't know, all of a sudden that's toxicity. And for this like comment up here where she's saying male fans tend to be concerned with memorizing trivia or collecting fandom related items. Like, how much fandom related items crap I got around
That's
here?
that's she said male fans. That's every fan.
That's
Yes.
freaking
Every fan.
everybody. That's what
It,
you
again,
do.
again, like I said, it's real simple. It's not about being gatekeepers. Either you're in it or you're not, or you want to learn. If you, like you just said, if you want to learn, that's awesome. Then you're not going to say any of this stuff if you really want to learn, because that wouldn't be your first. Your first go-to wouldn't be, oh, I'm being fold or whatever against me. If your goal is to learn, if my goal is to learn, I don't know how to ride a motorcycle, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, they didn't teach me how to ride a motorcycle because I'm black or whatever. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You either want to learn how to do it or you don't. Simple.
Exactly. And, I think that when we see articles like this, and since the three of us have experienced what it's like to be in these chat rooms, and for some of us, let's say for 20 years, I'm not going to say which ones, but let's say over a 20-year experience from when the chat rooms in these games first started, when they
Mhm.
first started, let's say, to today. I haven't been in them the whole time, but I have observed certain types of behavior in there, and none of them were discrimination. They do just want to know who you are. If you say that you are a woman, there is a lot of interest in you. It's a girl. Oh my God, that's a girl. So
Mhm.
I would hear that like it's more like they're trying to chat you up than anything else. And I'm sure Lorena has experienced this, where as soon as they find out, oh, you're a girl, wow. And that happens on YouTube, honestly, because sometimes when we're not streaming like this, or
Mhm.
showing a video of ourselves, you can't see who's making a comment or putting in a super chat or whatever. They realize you're a woman. Oh, it's a woman. Oh, wow. Okay, that's cool. It's more of a fascination, I have found. Lorena, have you also experienced that, even on this platform?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When I've gone like well, before I showed my face, and people would ask fandom questions, and I'd go, down that rabbit hole with all this, with like, oh, you're a girl and you know this. Really, I don't believe you're a girl. I
I've
don't
never,
believe you're a woman. I don't believe you are. And then you show the face, and they're kind of like, oh, you really know this stuff? You really, really, really know this stuff? And then you get the, okay, cool, you know this stuff. So let
Which
me
is,
ask you, what do you think about this?
you know,
What do you think about this? What do you think
yeah,
about this?
which is why I kind of, why the only reason why I was leaning to the idea that there were fewer women in genre who were fans of genre entry, just because of the reaction we get sometimes. That's why I lowballed it, but maybe it is 20%, Dmajini. Maybe it is
it's
more.
possible. But
And
here's
I'm not going to say you may be right on this. I can't say for certain.
the thing with this is that, like, and this is great hearing this from YouTube, is because for me, and this is why I can say I'm having total anecdotal experience. I've never been like, when I seen the girl want to play a video game or anything like that, try to question. I'd be like, great. I don't. I'm like, I mean, there was this girl way back when I was like, I had the biggest crush on her. When I found out she wanted to play Street Fighter, I was like, here's a controller. I'm like, I'm not trying to question anything. You know what I'm saying? So
Well, yeah.
it's different for me. Or like, I can't speak for every guy, but I know for me, I just, I guess that's my toxic masculinity again. I enjoyed the company. I enjoyed the company of girls. Girls and ladies. When I was growing up, of course, if there was any girl that was even slightly interested in playing video games or liking comics, it's not like I'm gonna kick them out. Like you want
Right.
you want to bring them in, bring them on in. Like, come on in. What, the weather's nice. Come on in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, so this is another one. The Temple News: women in fandoms and fine community experience discrimination. What? I
I
tell you, it's almost like they're making this stuff up, because I'm like, again, I think this is a problem of the geekdom and fandom and genre stuff becoming so mainstream, and then people, like, you will get what some people like to call posers. You will get those people who just want to
yeah.
be down, and then now that they get there, they be like, "Oh, I want to get it." Again, that's just like me going and saying, "Hey, I want to go to a beauty shop and say, oh, I don't like how you're doing hair. You got to do it this way." Or I go to a knitting factory and say, I don't like how you're doing this. You got to do it this way. You're not letting me in. I want to play my PlayStation right where you're doing your women's hair. Like, that doesn't make sense. And that's what it seems like I'm seeing here when you have people like, again, if you're in it, you're in it. You don't have to, it should never be, geekdom was never about forcing your way into anything. It really wasn't. What you had to force yourself into, and if you wanted to get into sports, if you wanted to get into anything else, because then you had something to literally, physically prove,
Mhm.
right, to get into those things. But for geekdom, it's all about expanding your mind. It was really a hobby of thought, really, when you think about it, because you're stepping into an imaginary world. You want to bring that out. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't really something that had to be forced. But this to me just seems like people who just are trying to get in for what? For, you shouldn't have to fight to get in sexist against sexist subculture. What is that? I don't know.
I think with, and this is just me. I think you have these women accusing fandom of gatekeeping, again, because they feel that they shouldn't have to conform to get into that particular space.
Mm.
They shouldn't have to, quote unquote, pay the price of admission to be able to get into fandom. We know that the price of admission into fandom is knowledge
Mm.
and knowing the lexicon, knowing the lore that's in there. That's the price of admission. If you don't have it right away and you're interested, okay, we can kind of work with that. But that's what it is. You get these women, and I know several of them who think that they shouldn't have to do that. How come I can't just go into fandom and change everything? Like, case in point, like years ago when I was going to conventions, until that part of fandom kind of annoyed me a little bit. I mean, back into fandom now, but at that particular time, it's like I would go to conventions for, well, just say Jason Momoa was there. Yes, this was when he was in Stargate and people didn't really know who he was. I
Mhm.
knew of him, but I liked him in Stargate, so that's why I was there. I'm sitting next to some chicks who they could care less what Jason Momoa did, what he was in. They just cared that he was hot and they just wanted pictures with him. Not that I begrudge you for that,
Mm.
but don't pretend to think you know anything about this particular fandom and why you like, or why you like Stargate, why you here, which Stargate incarnation do you like. You can't answer those questions. You're just there because you just want to get a picture with a celebrity. And that's the difference. I think that they feel that they shouldn't have to conform, which is why you get a lot of these writers who, rather than say, Hey, let me go see what was done in the comics. Let me sit down, go through that, get some experts, and come up with something that makes sense. So they don't want to do that. I want to write my own story. I want to
Mm-hmm.
write a story that's kind of like Ally McBeal, but not as funny. I don't really want to focus on the comic stuff, but I want to have my main character act like a hoe and blame men for everything. I just
Mm-hmm.
That's what you wind up getting, and it's does such a disservice to the fandom and to women who are genuinely interested in the fandom. Like, I feel very insulted when something like this is done, when they just basically take that particular fandom, wipe their backside with it, and throw it out there for mass consumption.
Mm-hmm.
I do as
Agreed.
well, and I think essentially what happens in these cases is that they think that they're going to do something innovative and creative and avant-garde, and often what they do is not innovative, it's not creative, it's not avant-garde, it's not really anything at all. And they do have a checklist because you can just see the checklist in their mind. It has to
Mm-hmm.
have this in it, it has to have that in it. It's not an organic story. This is not, these stories are not necessarily checklists. They're fascinating stories. And if you
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
care about the checklist, the stories already had elements that would appeal to anybody anyway. And they didn't have to have a checklist in order to make it work. But that's what we're seeing. For example, that there's always going to be a part, or at least we haven't seen it for a little while, but oftentimes it would be something like a word that I would hear, or a phrase, as I was saying to Lorena. There would always be a comment like, well, none of this would have happened if you hadn't been here to help us through, like those types of comments. If you hadn't been here, Spider-Man wouldn't be the man he is, or Thor wouldn't be the man he is if you hadn't shown up. And or I think we saw something like that in He-Man.
mm-hmm.
Lorena, you remember
Yeah. Oh God.
kind of
Yeah.
comments, if you hadn't shown up, Tila, the whole freaking universe would have gone to hell.
Yeah.
You
Without
know,
you.
without you, I don't know what we would have done without you. Comments
God.
like that, that are kind of unnecessary to put in, but there are these affirmation comments meant to make them feel like somebody is acknowledging them. It doesn't mean shit, but like in their mind, they're like, somebody's acknowledging me, I'm important. Guess what? It's horrible writing, and everybody knows it's garbage. So you're fooling only yourself.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. Well, to kind of wrap things up a little bit, and pose a question to both of you. Do you think in any way that this is going to get better, that you're going to have people to kind of stop trying to, I guess, forcefully inject, say, the hope, or there should be more women in fandom, or just push this agenda into fandom and push men out? Do you think that the pendulum has swung so far that it's going to swing back the other way? Do you think it's eventually going to right itself, or do you think we're just going to see more and more and more of this?
I would like for that pendulum to swing back to normal, but I think that we have it's become too mainstream at this point. It's very
Mm,
difficult to take that out of the mainstream. So what I think that may happen, unfortunately, and it's we've seen it happen to Star Wars and almost everything else. It's gonna have to pretty much that particular, I wouldn't say the fandom's gonna die, but that particular franchise is gonna have to go away, or at least you know get put shelved for a while and then come
mhm,
back. I'm perfectly fine if tomorrow they say we're not doing any more Star Wars for another 30 years because we went 30 years without Star Wars.
mhm,
We went that long without. Oh, actually, it wasn't 30, but you know what I mean. We went a very long time without Star Wars. In between, that's why we had all of those EU books, right? And I would love. I know it's not going to happen, but I would love for somebody else to own Star Wars and be like, guess what, Disney, all your stuff is now crap. We're gonna get rid of that. We're gonna bring back the EU. I would love for that to happen, but I don't think it's going to. Um, and unfortunately, I think we kind of what I think is going to end up happening is that it's not going to stop, but it's going to get to a point where it's just going to plateau. It's gonna have to. We're gonna still have those people who
Hmm.
are still. We're gonna still get these articles here and there. We're still gonna get our She-Hulk. I mean, are they not doing another season for She-Hulk? So we're still gonna get stuff like that. Um, as long as people who are in charge, like Mrs. Alonso, who are in charge of the MCU, you're gonna have that keep happening. As long as Kathleen Kennedy stays. And by the way, even if these two leave, guess what? Their acolytes are still there.
That's right.
And you know they're not going to say, it's not going to be like a Elon going to Twitter and just say, guess what, I'm clipping all of y'all type of thing. That's not going to happen. They're going to stay there. And not unless somebody literally buys Disney. And that's not going to happen. If somebody came and bought Disney and said, guess what, I'm cleaning the house, everybody's out, we're going to fix this, then that might happen. But that's never
Hmm.
going to happen. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I think that it's interesting to look at these larger IPs in particular, because what happened to Star Wars, I would like to say that if I were really going to believe that they had these ideas beforehand, and let's say one or two executives said that we always wanted it to go in this direction, it's going to go in this direction. And if it was a great innovative story, if it was an amazing story, and we got these amazing stories,
Hmm.
and it went in the direction they wanted to, there was always room for that. In other words, for an IP that has what seems to be a limitless amount of cash, they could have had whatever stories they wanted to. But
Mm.
they did whatever they did, which was not well thought out. It just wasn't. It wasn't well thought. And then they
Thoughts? What's
messed
that?
around with characters that were fine and kind of ruined, part of their stories. So, it's
Hmm.
kind of like they self-sabotaged themselves. From a business point of view, it's ridiculous, but they did it. This is what they decided to do. But they could have gone ahead and made as many female orientated or, LBGT orientated Star Wars shows they wanted to. And we would have still watched all of them. We would have watched all of them if they were good. The lesson is that they
Yeah.
produce good work. And it doesn't matter what it necessarily is going to focus on. If it's good work, we will watch it. And I'm not quite sure whether we're ever going to see a balance of that many women in the genre. It takes money to kind of be a fan sometimes in these genres. You have to have a
Hmm.
bankroll. You can't just say that you're going to be, a fan of this. Maybe if you live in a country like the United States where there are libraries where you can go see stuff, or you can go to a friend's house and watch stuff, but eventually you're going to need cash to kind of invest in this
Disposable income.
fan.
You need some
So
money.
if you are lucky enough to be in a country, or you have a friend who's into it and you're a woman, that's great. But if you don't have money, and honestly, women just don't have the bankroll that men have, it's just a fact. And that's okay. Like, I'm not upset about it, but it does take money to be a fan sometimes for some of these things to happen. So there is that consideration too. So do I think more women are going to get involved in the genre? No, I don't. I think that we've maxed it out, and there are other concerns that women are being distracted by, and that's fine that they're being distracted by this. But even with no entertainment coming out, those films still
Hmm.
couldn't grab the attention that they should have grabbed from women. And that's just how it is. But I just don't think it's going to increase in number at this point. I think we are at the saturation point.
Mm.
And I think that if they don't
I would
satisfy that
agree.
male gaze, like what we saw with that whatever we just saw a few minutes ago, and that
Mhm.
Ant-Man thing, that women are going to turn away.
I'll give you a case in point. Bridgerton season 3 is coming up.
Yay!
I
Quite
have my yogurt for you.
Oh, there you go. See? And a spoon.
Real quick, just to piggyback on what you said, Arum, uh, female, strong female protagonists in Star Wars, they had them already. Jaina Solo, Leia Organa Solo. Uh, I'm drawing a blank on
Mara
her name.
Jade.
Mara Jade. Leia's master, Sabatine. She was a badass. I mean, the horns. I mean, there was so many dope female characters already there. And mind you, again, you already had your ladies were already locked in who liked this stuff already. You going in there and do whatever you did, you made the formula bad. Now nobody likes it. I keep hearing Andor's the best thing so far that they put out, and nobody's watching it. You know why, Disney? Because you know you don't effed up. Bill Duke voice, just like in Minister Society. You see that right there? You know you don't effed up. That's what they did.
From a company that was known to have consistently good.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when they mess up badly.
Yeah.
Big time, and just really, especially with their social media presence, especially with, I'll say, the official Star Wars account. Just the way that they have trashed and torched legacy Star Wars fans. Just like, you know what? I don't care what you put out. I just no, I'm not interested in seeing it.
Women are not convinced by this if you don't like it, because it's women. They're not buying it. They're not spending money on it.
Nope.
And that shows they're not watching it. And we were never going to be the majority of people watching it anyway, but they're not watching it. They're not watching their own stuff that they're putting out. And that shows in the statistics. So no matter what they say, they can't even guilt themselves into watching that shit.
Nope. Because you didn't know who your audience was. If I'm writing a show for a genre that is mostly men, you daggone guaranteed I'm going to write stuff that men want to see and that men want to look at, and casting accordingly. Like I told somebody, case in point, if I was casting a martial arts film, you dang sure I'm hiring the hottest Asian martial arts actors that I can freaking find, because that's what people want to see, and that is the genre. It's, you have to know your audience, and they don't want to know the audience that's there. They want to create this audience that they think is there, and it's being rejected repeatedly. So who knows how long they're going to keep banging their heads up against the wall.
They will
with
keep
this.
doing it until their money runs out. That's what's
Yeah,
going to happen.
until it runs out. In Disney's case, until the theme park money runs out, because it is still making money.
Oh, yeah.
But the things that sell, besides Baby Yoda, he does sell shoot that little he sells. That's just he sells. He's a Slytherin. I totally understand that. Original trilogy stuff. That is the only thing that sells, and sells consistently.
I have to tell you, the last time I was at Disneyland, I wanted to see Leia running around with Han and Luke. That's what we wanted to see. But of course, they decided not to immerse us in that. And they lost a lot of money, because I would have paid $50 to go ahead and see that. I would have
paid money to be on the Galactic Star Cruiser. I'm sitting down, I'm going to dinner, and you open the door and there's Darth Vader at the other end. I'd pay for that experience.
Like, oh my God.
You know what would have been great too? It'd be like, we'd be honored if you join us. He comes. We'd be honored if you join us.
Yep.
Someone pulls out a gun and they got something that pulls the gun from him or something.
Yeah.
Even if it's just the actor that's there that plays Han Solo, and you're just walking in, I would have paid for that. People were willing to pay for that experience. I was willing to pay money to walk into Mos Eisley Cantina.
Yes.
Have it completely like the movie. Would have paid to see Han shoot Greedo first. I would have paid,
which he did.
Which he did. I would have paid for Ben Kenobi to pull out the lightsaber and chop off that dude's arm, and people just look and then go right back to what it is they were doing. But to be in those scenes, where you're the one who's piloting, Luke Skywalker's X-Wing, and you get, that's the part that's in in oh gosh, in Star Tours,
Mhm.
but to recreate those experiences that we've seen in those original movies, because that is the foundation, and they
A
chose to
hundred
get rid of
percent.
that, and with that they threw away the money.
Yep. That's why Star Wars has such a strong foundation, and they wanted to build it on quicksand.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted to do. They wanted that quick
even even to
quicksand.
this day, and it's not Star Wars, but when I go to Disney, and I didn't see her there the last time, I go there to see Alice in Wonderland every single time I go. And like, even
Hmm.
knowing that Alice, that I'm going to walk through, like when I see the teacup floating around and I see Alice, like, it's Alice. Like, even knowing that that's going to be there, like, I'm like, here's my money, here.
Mm,
So
I know, it's
that
like
level, yes. You know,
mm,
that level of anticipation, knowing that she is going to be there, some very nice person who works at Disney as one of these actors is going to be doing that, is why we enjoy this whole thing. It's the second part of what we enjoy in the fandom, or things like that,
exactly,
the
exactly.
experiences.
Even I'll say, like, for like when I go to Galaxy's Edge, and when I walk through there, because it just really does not feel like Star Wars. There's this one section where they'll have like Kylo Ren and his little lackey stormtroopers out there, and they kind of walk around like they have nothing to do. People are just like, what's going on? Yeah, I don't see what's happening. Blah, blah, blah. Now, a couple of years ago, by Star Tours, when Vader would come out, people would lose their freaking minds. I mean, it was just insane. People would stop. Is that Vader? Is that Vader? People would stop and just like, I can't believe he just like walked by. He'd walk into Star Tours, and I remember they had the stormtroopers like right there when you walked in. And my nephew was with me. He was driving me nuts, and I think we were waiting to get into Star Tours. The stormtroopers came by. I said, "Yeah, you can come and get this one." They stopped, came right over, looked him dead in the face, and my nephew was like, "Ah, did you see what he did?" And that just like, he was watching Star Wars for a while after that, and then
mm,
crap happening, dropped off. But he still remembers that experience.
mhm. That's good stuff. Right. Oh well.
Well, they got to get that
If
back, and
only. If
yeah.
only. But whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
But
so much and good job ever seeing a slave layer outfitted there ever.
Oh my god, they should have that, and they should have an Aquaman there. Like, they should be, have night, an adult night, like they have on Disney Plus. You put in your little code. There's an adult night
What
for
is it called?
adults only, the adult part of the park.
hashtag Disney After Dark. That's all
That's
I'm gonna say
right.
on Twitter.
Mhm.
Mm,
Thank me later.
thank you for thinking it now.
Disney After Dark. Oh, that's all I'm going to say is there's some really talented artists. That's all that's all I'm going to say. Well, that's going to wrap this up for this fire discussion. So thanks to Dmajini for suggesting this topic, and thank you for hanging out with us
It
for
was
the
awesome.
discussion. I'm saying, yeah, it's great,
And
great
the
stuff.
ladies have said it. It is now 85-15. I'm just saying.
Yes.
I'm staying corrected.
Well, we offered you some additional information that you did not know at the time. So
Yes, yes, but
get
yeah.
to spread that around. So before we head on out, why don't you guys shout out your channels, starting with of Positive Fandom. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes. Gosh, guys, you can find me on my channel, Positive Fandom, where I do have my live Sunday brunch show on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. in the morning. So do check that out. I'm like this close to monetization. So do check out my channel. I assure you,
Awesome, awesome.
I just came off from one of Mon Mothma's parties. So there's a lot.
Really?
Yes. You have to go to my
Ah,
channel and you'll find out. I can give you tips on how to get into Mon Mothma's parties. And don't worry, Lorena, I got an invite for you. So you're,
oh, thank you, thank you.
yeah,
I did want to go to that party. Yeah.
yeah, I figured as much. But for anyone else who wants to go, I do give tips and, of how to get into the party if you are on Coruscant anytime soon. But it's fun things like that on my channel, as well as other reviews and things. But you can also find me on the Post Geek Singularity. Lorraine and I do a show there called The Ladies of the PGS. And I'm also on Lorraine's channel quite often for our Toxic Male Appreciation show, especially, as well as Midnight's Edge. So please do check me out on any of those channels. Also on the 1/6 Scale Man Network for Say What or Uncivilized Scoundrels. And thank you, everybody in this community. You guys are the best. And Lorena and Dmajini, thank you for having me.
Oh,
No, thank you. Thank you.
very welcome. Thank you for being here. Well, Lord Commander Dmajini, please tell the people
Yes.
where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me on my channel, Dmajini, Dmajini, if you're listening. I do social commentary, pop culture stuff. You would catch me doing live streams on Saturday and gaming stream on Sunday. I'm actually doing a playthrough of Near Automata right now, and I have 2 new games I want to get. I'm actually got to get new Near Replicant, and I got to get the remake of Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII. I can't wait to play that because I never played that game. So yes, and obviously the Dark Council on Wednesdays. So make sure you come there. You find myself and Lorena, the
Mhm.
super producer herself, and we will have the rest of the fellas there. And yes, thanks for having me here. I appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you very much for being here, Dmajini. I sure do appreciate it. Yo, as you know, I'm Lorena Creole. You can find me on Twitter causing all kinds of mischief, saying what's on my mind, whether people like it or not. You can also find me on Instagram, posting various pictures and whatnot and stuff over there, particularly of very disrespectful desserts, which I love to do. And here on YouTube, where I have my pop culture channel, where I do pop culture sci fi commentary, also theme park live streams where I go out and see the physical manifestation of pop culture, talk anime, and of course, Indian movies. So, a whole bunch of pop culture deliciousness cooking up here on this channel. So, I want to thank all of you guys out there for watching this video. Thank you so very much. Please do subscribe to all of my guest panelists here on this panel, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Take it easy now.